So yeah, let's start from some Angular-specific questions. So I will start from some easy ones, so you can answer them just in short to save our time. Yeah, and if needed, I will ask additional questions about that. So first question, just about the directives. Like what? Just in short, what is it, and what types we have of directives?
Yeah, so we have two main types of directives, attribute directives and structural directives. Well, we not necessarily attribute directives, but like non-structural.
Yeah, but technically it's called attribute. Yeah,
okay.
in guys, yeah?
Yeah, right. And so they are ways to modify some DOM elements, like structural directives actually can affect the DOM. And non-structural directives, they can modify some behavior, like make something, let's say, highlightable or whatever else, like make draggable, make them behave in a certain way. So
okay. Yeah, that's great. So if you're looking in a template, how we can distinguish the attribute directives and the structural ones? They have one of the difference in terms of using, like
right, yeah.
we're appending something. Okay.
Yeah, so structural directives have an asterisk before the name of the directive.
Yeah, so this asterisk, is it mandatory to use or not? What it means?
If we make like if we put the structural directive on ng template, then it's yeah. So that's another way of using structural directives without asterisk.
So it's a synthetic sugar, basically.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Okay, great. Sometimes, like in docs, say that a component is a directive. How do you think? Why? Just your thoughts on that.
So yeah, like since directives are not necessarily like put as attribute directives, we can also like make the directive as an element itself, like this, like doesn't stop us. So and directives are basically components without templates, without its own template, I guess.
Yeah, that's correct. And internally, the component is derived from a directive, basically. That's why we can use directive as a component, basically, in HTML, for example, for some edge cases, where it's needed. Okay, so talking about component, can you please explain the lifecycle hooks that we have upon initialization? Just in short, with short explanation of what it does.
All right. So first one is ngonInit. It triggers after like component received his inputs first, like initialized. And
what about on changes?
Yeah, on changes as well. Like it does, like change, like whenever inputs change, it triggers basically whenever. Then ng after viewInit. And this one triggers when DOM is initialized, when DOM is rendered within the component. ng on content changes. This is triggered whenever like we use transclusion with ng content and content transcluded content changes. On content init similar, but only on initialization. View changes. Do we have view ngo?
View checked.
View checked, right?
Yeah, check.
Right. So this one is triggered when like change detection happens and component DOM potentially changes. So and on destroy, like when component is unmounted and destroyed, so we can unsubscribe from like any subscriptions and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Regarding ngonInit, will on that step input properties be accessible? Will they be already binded?
ngonInit, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we already have access to the first inputs of the component.
Okay, but when then you said that ngonInit is called first, but when ngon change is called?
First time as well, and then all consequent changes of the properties of the inputs.
Yeah. So upon first initialization, when ng-on-init is called, what would be first, ng-on-init or onChanges?
I guess ng-on-init, but I wouldn't depend on that in code.
Let's think about it a bit. So ng-on-changes, what it does, just in short.
So
when it's called.
Yeah, so it's called when inputs change, right? So
yeah, were changed or initialized. Yeah, it's
or
the same.
initialized. Yeah.
Yeah. So before you said that on init, the input property is already initialized.
Right.
So it means onChange is called before. If you have input properties.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. We also have a constructor on our class. It's not a part of the lifecycle hooks, but what we are doing in it, what is it?
So whenever the class is created, like the instance of the component is initialized, right? So we would initialize some of the variables maybe, and sometimes we can initialize subscriptions over there if we need to.
But there is a rule, maybe I guess you heard, that we should not write any business logic, initialization logic in a constructor.
Right.
How do you think why?
So, well, at least we shouldn't do it if the logic depends on the inputs. So because we don't have access to the inputs.
Yeah, of course. But we can, like, for example, if we have a dependencies like API service or anything else, we can actually, technically, yeah, we can subscribe to something, do something, even trigger some API calls. But it's also not
efficient, I guess.
It's not even efficient, it's prohibited to do. Because, you should never do this. Because there actually is a situations where it may cause an errors in future. In some circumstances. Maybe you heard something, because initially you said that we may actually do something.
So I guess the logic is that component is not always actually initialized when constructor is called, and then it would mean that ng-on-destroy wouldn't be called when we need to unsubscribe on something if ng-on init.
Not exactly. If the object of internally in Angular is configured, created or instantiated, then more likely, Angular has no logic to create a component and then not to call on inits or onChanges. But how do you think? So per component lifecycle, we can say that destroy ng-on-init is called only once,
Right.
But for object lifecycle, can we say the same?
For object lifecycle?
Object of that. So constructor will be called only once per object lifecycle, that's correct. But can we say that per component lifecycle? Per component lifecycle also, but per object lifecycle will ng-on-init or onDestroy will be called only once.
Sorry, I think I missed some of it. Maybe connection is breaking. So
it's basically the question why we should not write any business logic in the constructor nor the initialization, because there may be situations where Angular may reuse the object itself. And just call onDestroy and then all the cycle one more time.
I got it. Okay.
So sometimes you can reproduce it with some large components like grids, and for example, if you navigate to another page with the same grid with the same input properties, it will just reuse it.
So that it would reuse the instance of the class, but not the component itself. Okay.
Because why not? If you are Angular devs, why we need to destroy an object, load the garbage collector and create one more? Right. We can just follow the lifecycle. Okay. So talking about after viewing it, a bit when it is called, like what logic is available inside that is not available on any step.
So we can reference inner DOM elements of the component, like by view child, view children, and stuff like this. So we would be able to access an actual element if we reference it in the component. Like.
Okay. So in on destroy, what kind of, you said already that we can like manage subscriptions, but what are ways of managing the subscriptions? Like the docs way is to store subscriptions. Yeah, we can skip that and just call it in a loop. But what are other ways?
So normally we would create a destroy subject, all right, and use take until on all our subscriptions. And also async pipe like automatically unsubscribes when component is destroyed.
Yeah, that's correct. Maybe use some third-party library to like avoid a bit of boilerplate, even with take until it requires.
I'm aware of one like from NgNeat, but haven't used it much. Like I think NgNeat does it.
Yeah, there are a couple of them. One of the popular is what we are using is take until, or not take until destroy.
Okay,
they're pretty much working the same, but just encapsulating all of that stuff. Some decorators. Okay. Okay, let's move to another question. So NgFor structural directive have a track by property. Maybe you know what it means?
Yeah, so it kind of ties the view like to a key and doesn't update like an element doesn't redraw it like if the key is the same. So we would use it in like big lists of data, and so it accepts a function that takes an index and item, which is like what you are looping for.
Okay.
Yeah, and return.
So what it what it helps with?
Like optimization of views and not destroying, not redrawing stuff, not reinitializing.
Okay, great. Do you know about view encapsulation?
What exactly?
I mean, on component decorator, we have the encapsulation property. We can set it to we can set it to non-emulated shadow DOM. What they, maybe you can describe what it means.
So when we set view encapsulation to none, like we are kind of managing CSS ourselves with global styles. And
so how will component CSS behave?
It will be
component styles
globally.
May not be necessary CSS. Okay.
Globally declared.
Okay.
So the default one is I think emulated. When like Angular creates special selectors on top of what we describe in the CSS, so it's only this component specific styles. And Shadow DOM.
What kind of maybe you know what kind of selectors? Maybe you saw in DevTools. Noticed. What it adds?
Some unique identifiers. I'm not sure how they are constructed.
They're basically attributes, special attributes to distinguish them. Okay. Right. What about the Shadow DOM?
So it's I think utilizing Shadow DOM. To be honest, I haven't used this one. I have used Shadow DOM, but not this view encapsulation type. So Shadow DOM CSS basically is encapsulated inside the Shadow DOM element, and then it's not accessible by any outside of this Shadow DOM.
How do you think why Shadow DOM property is not used? It's an internal feature of browser. It should work faster and better, in terms of isolation. But why it's not used? Just your thoughts on that.
Why this view encapsulation type is rarely used? Or?
Yeah.
I think because Angular does the job well enough in the emulated style, and probably Shadow DOM also loads up the browser more, and performance-wise it's less efficient than emulated.
Okay. Okay, maybe is there any difference in the behavior between emulated and Shadow DOM? Maybe you heard something.
Probably it's more difficult to style of the to pierce the Shadow DOM styles.
Yeah, the NgDeep will not work. Yeah, but they have the Shadow DOM kind of deep, but in general it's not a good approach. But what is NgDeep? Why we should avoid using it?
So it's kind of similar to CSS important in a way that you can pierce the styles or like the encapsulation of the component and override some of its styles that were initially declared there. Well, we should avoid it because it's overriding stuff and in a very imperative manner, I guess.
Okay. So NgDeep is recommended even if used. It's like must have to use a host before that. Maybe you know why?
Right. NgDeep kind of does like in a global scope, like this.
It disables the emulator, basically switch it for one specific selector to none. Right. So it may affect some other places. So in order to prevent that, what will host do?
Yeah, host makes sure that it targets only the host of the component and the insides of it.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, have you worked with the change detection strategy?
Yeah. So
can you please explain like what is it, what values we have, and what differs between?
So the default one, so we have on push and default, right, and unknown as well. We have known. So with on push, like component change detection is only triggered whenever either we receive input properties or like some event happens from within a component, like DOM event, for example, or like a sync pipe, or we call manually like change detection ref mark for check or detect changes. With default one, it's called basically like the whole tree is rechecked like until we reach like either on push or
maybe you know how often it's called, on what, when, basically. What triggers change detection for a component?
I think there is like a tick on each tick, and I think like NgZone manages this, right? And NgZone is kind of monkey patching all DOM events, and HTTP request, and checks, does like runs checks whenever anything occurs, like any event, synchronous event, user input or whatever, and runs it on the whole tree, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So with on push regarding input parameters, if we have an input parameter and input property, and it's an object, when the change detection with on push will be called, when it will understand that object is changed, like what object change?
Right, like only reference, so it looks at the references.
You mentioned mark for check and detect change. Maybe you know the difference between them?
Right, so detect changes runs change detection on the component itself and its children, and mark for check like marks this component for the future, like when change detection runs. It marks it like so it will be checked next time, and also checks its ancestors, I think.
Okay. We can also trigger it by application ref tick, but how do you think why it's not a good approach?
Because it will run change detection on the whole tree, like rerun.
Yeah, that's not okay. Okay, what do you understand by lazy loading?
So like it's a way to split up the bundle into into separate bundles, and to kind of optimize initial loading time and only load what you need, like basically, in short. And
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, that's not. Okay, so can you please explain how dependency injection works in Angular?
Okay, so yeah, like so we have like this noise. Sorry for that. Can you hear the noise, by the way?
Just very non-loud, so it's okay.
So basically, we have this dependency injection tree, and Angular can provide like injectables on different levels, and if like dependency is provided on some top level, it's also accessible down the line. You can like provide it on either like application level, or like there is also a platform thing which like works with like micro front ends mainly, even higher levels than the application. Then you'd have modules level, each module level, and components levels, and which is accessible to the children of the component and the component itself. So something like this.
Maybe so you mentioned platform injector, module injector, maybe some other.
There is any provided in any that
what do you mean?
provides a separate instance of the like injectable in each lazy loaded module.
What will happen if you have lazy loaded modules and provided in root?
It still be accessible, like the single instance of the provider. Like
okay. Maybe is there a way to affect DI lookup logic? So I mean about the like optional decorator, some other.
Sorry, what logic you said?
DI dependency injection lookup logic. So may we affect how it will be performed, how the dependencies will be searched across the tree, maybe restrict somehow to some specific item, some injector, or for example, as I mentioned, make the dependency optional.
Yeah, so in the constructor you can specify like how this dependency is like received. So like optional, yeah, one of the examples that kind of doesn't break Angular like runtime if it cannot find this dependency. There is also self. Can't really remember how it behaves.
Okay, no problem. It's pretty rarely used. So let's talk a bit about the optional. Maybe who is throwing an exception in case if it's non-optional dependency and it's not found. Like what injector?
So I guess the like injector.
Like you may not see it in an error message. Maybe you remember.
Yeah.
Just the first word in that saying, which injector?
I think the injector that is dependent on that injectable. No, like
no, because you said it will go throughout all the tree, yeah, and eventually we'll go to a null injector, yeah, and null injector have a check if it's optional, okay, if not optional, then throw an exception.
Right.
Okay. So let's move to another part. So can you please describe ways of how do components can interact with each other, except, like, I mean, built-in ways, except NgRx or anything else?
Yeah, so first is obvious like inputs, outputs. This is generally done on the, like, if components are like close to each other in the tree. Then we would have services that can like be injected on either on module or on component level, and then all the child elements can access it and change values or like subscribe to value changes. And then we'd have we can manually call some methods or like set values on the component with like view child, content child, and stuff. Yeah.
That's enough. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So a bit about the dependency injection. We'll go back. So what if we will provide it in root and, for example, write the same service in a provided section of some component? What will happen?
The component will create its own instance and it will override the root injected one.
Yeah, but not actually like override, but will for this component will replace it and will be used a new one. But what about the child components? Children's hold that?
They will use closest provided one.
Yeah, close. Okay. Okay. Have you worked with NgRx?
Yeah.
Can you please, just in short, one question about that. Can you please tell me the life cycle of NgRx?
Okay. So first an action is dispatched, then it goes through a reducer, then effect takes place, then like which either depends on the action or on the state change, and then like effect may or may not dispatch another action that is then passed to the reducer again, and so on. Something like this.
Okay, how do you think when we should use in state management libraries? Just your thoughts on that.
Okay, so I think when we have a lot of interconnected entities, so similar to like why we would choose SQL database over no SQL one, I guess when entities have a lot of relationships and they are complex. Something like this.
Okay. Okay, can you please tell me the difference between pure and impure pipe?
So pure pipe only checks like itself, like the output value only runs well basically when inputs change like to that pipe, and impure pipe I think it runs on every change detection cycle. Yeah, that's correct. Let's think that, for example, in our template we have a method that is used in some interpolation. How do you think, is it good or not? You mean like to get some value we use we call an actual method of the component, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that good. Like ideally we should kind of pre-compute that value and store it in a variable, because like this method would run on each change detection cycle, like whenever a component checks.
how do you think what we can do if we like? Let's assume we do need to use a method. What we can do? We know that it's pure. Depends on some values. Probably we are doing it with in some NgFor, maybe like doing something not directly in HTML template and the interpolation, but in some method. Is there a way to optimize the performance for it? Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, we can somehow cache the output value of the method, for example. So if inputs don't change, it doesn't recompute, for example.
Yeah, maybe one of the like partner or a way. There's a common name.
Common name
for such functions. Yeah, for such functions to remember the input and output value, and then
it's kind of dynamic programming. I'm not sure how it's called. Like
it's okay. It's memoize basically.
Memoize, yeah.
The approach. Yeah. So
Exactly.
memoize pipes, all of that. Okay. Okay. Let's talk a bit about the RxJS. So can you please describe, like, just in short, what is it and what relation it has with NgRx?
All right. So RxJS is a pretty big library that provides us with various ways to handle asynchronous like things in or events, or like basically asynchronous stuff, and so it provides us ways to modify the data on the fly, like the streams of data, right, with pipeable operators. We can like use it for caching, like to store data, to store the state of something, and to like be able to react to state changes and stuff like this.
Okay. So can you please tell me what is inside RxJS? What are the main parts or main things? What it provides?
So the base one is observable, so it's a stream of data over time, I'd say. And then the subject, behavior subject, like subject doesn't store the last value, behavior subject does store the last value. There is replay subjects that replay values whenever a new subscription occurs, like n values, right, that we specify. And I think there is a async subject, but I haven't really used it, so I can't really talk about it.
Okay. So in general, subject, what is it? Oh, sorry. Let's start from observable. What is the observable? There is an observable and observer.
Right. So observable is kind of a thing that you can subscribe to, like that emits values over time. So and observer is something that subscribes to that observable that receives the values.
Okay, maybe you know what is a hot and cold observable?
Right. So cold observables, they only emit upon subscription, and they like don't share value for multiple subscribers. So like example would be Angular HTTP methods. Like for hot observables, they are sharing the values and they don't really care about the subscriptions to them. They just emit values and they like share same values across multiple subscribers, and they start even like no matter whether something is subscribed to them or not.
Okay, great. About the cold observable, what if we will subscribe twice to the same cold observable? What we will receive?
So potentially we would receive different values. Like we can receive same, but like same thing is it's kind of.
Yeah, depends on.
Yeah.
definition, basically, yeah?
Yeah.
But if it's like pure cold observable that's returning, I don't know, pi numbers.
So it would.
Oh no, pi numbers, I mean, not the pi numbers, Fibonacci, for example. Sequence.
Yeah, well, it would just recompute itself, basically. It's on every new subscription.
Yeah. Okay, great. Maybe you know the way of how to make cold observable hot?
Yes, so we can share it or share replay, like to also replay the last value. Like I like using share replay for caching like stuff if we don't need to refresh it too often. There is also publish, and with publish we would use another one, so to actually start the emissions. Forgot what is it. So basically to initialize emissions, like we first publish and then call another method which I forgot the name of.
Okay. Okay. So maybe you heard about the RxJS schedulers. Therefore, subscribe on.
Yeah, I've heard, but not used them much. Like I know that by default RxJS handles observables synchronously in the main thread, and there is a sync scheduler which probably does the same one like asynchronously. But yeah, I'm not very certain about.
That's enough. It's good. It's good. Okay. Okay. How do you think in terms of Angular and observables? Do we need to unsubscribe from each and every observable, or not?
Like the observables that only emit one values are kind of destroyed. Like if we kind of like HTTP again, like called observables, they would just emit one value and then like finalize themselves. So not from all we need to unsubscribe. Yeah.
Like we may skip, yeah. Sometimes we may skip, but in general, how do you think if we're using observables, should we rely on that in our component?
I'd probably always use to take until destroy. Just to ensure.
Yeah, agree. That maybe something will change in the future.
Yeah.
Just copy some stuff to like be sure. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's talk a bit about the HTTP client. Like, what are the benefits from using HTTP client? Why we are not using a fetch or etc. request?
So I think HTTP client is built on top of HTTP request, not upon fetch. Like fetch is not monkey patched by Zone.js, and we like the change detection doesn't run upon fetch. So Angular is HTTP client is wrapped with ngZone, so like is run within Angular, so we can ensure like proper change detection when stuff is received, and also it kind of emits observables, which is kind of the way to manage data within Angular.
Yeah. Okay. HTTP client also have one more feature. Interceptor.
Right. So we have interceptor with Angular. So we can intercept requests or responses and like attach some custom headers or modify data in some way, transform. So this is allowed because we are using a single like kind of HTTP client. So this is run on top of HTTP client. Yeah, that's great. Maybe you know what is the design pattern that is underneath interceptor or implemented with interceptor? Sorry, what's the design pattern?
Interceptor implements basically.
Not sure about the name.
Okay, it's commonly like middleware. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The same stuff. What if we will have multiple interceptors? How they will work?
So they will run all of them in sequence, I think. but in which sequence, I think depending on where we provide them from the closest to the most top level one.
Okay, what if we introduced an interceptor, but for some reason, we need to use HttpClient without it? What we can do with it?
Maybe provide override the provider to use nothing instead of it. You use value or use class or something like this on level, yeah, where it's provided.
Okay, let's talk a bit about Angular in general. What techniques have you used for optimization in Angular?
So, like for rendering optimization, I would use like on push with different like track by methods. Like I'd use caching of hard computations, of heavy computations. Like also for data caching, I'd use maybe like share replay or some store, and we'd split the bundle up into smaller bundles, like with lazy loading. Probably make PWA if it makes sense, so to cache assets, and then to use service workers for caching assets. Then generally cache as much stuff as we can that doesn't change too often, or like use a TTL, proper TTL for things that do change, that we know would change in a certain time. Maybe I forgot something.
That's great. No, that's okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Daniel. So that's pretty much it.